Hello, this is part 8 of our Building with Claude API series. And in this video, we're going to talk about introductory concepts to tool use with Claude. And tool use is what makes Claude powerful. When you think about it, Claude is powered by LLMs, right? The different LLM models such as Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. And what does an LLM do? It takes input text, does its processing, and gives us an output text based on its probabilistic nature. And the output it generates is based on all the training data that it has. And the training data also has a cutoff, right? So if it was only trained with data till last year, if you ask it something like, what is the weather today in San Francisco, for example, it doesn't have that information in its training data. So it will just reply saying, I don't have that information. But most of the time, for real world use cases, we would need to know the current information such as maybe the weather, what is the date today, and maybe what is the cricket score, or whatnot. There are all these different real-time information that is not present in the LLM's training data that we still need to be able to access. And there are all these other practical things that we want to get accomplished as well. Say, for example, you want to create a file in a directory, you want to edit a file, or you want to maybe organize your folder, right? All these practical activities an LLM cannot do by itself, because at the end of the day, it just takes input text, does its thing, and generates the output text based on probability. So it cannot perform these actions for us on a computer, for example. In order to fill the gap of LLMs not having current information and also not having access to tools, that is where this concept of tool use comes in place. And tool use enables Claude to have, in a sense, superpower. It starts becoming our co-worker by means of having access to tools. Okay, let's go back to our whiteboard and see some examples. Again, all of the material is coming from the official Anthropic Academy's course with the same name, all right? And we are talking about the introducing tool use topic from that course in this video, okay? All right, so let's look at the first diagram. Now, this is the limitation that we were talking about, right? When you as the user ask for what's the weather in San Francisco, California, Claude will not be able to answer it because it'll just say, I'm sorry, but I don't have access to up-to-date information. So to enable Claude to have these real-time information, we do some clever things. So let's look at the clever things that Claude does for us. Our application, so basically, this is our app, right? Now, an app would have both a client side and a server side, right? So this you can imagine as the client side. So here in this next diagram, so obviously there will be this client side, which is the user interface, right? The chat interface. That client side is powered by the server side, right? So on the server side, that is where we're going to be calling all the Claude API, never in the UI side, always in the server side, so that the API and the API key is all secure in your server. So here from our server, when we ask a question, what we could do is we could include extra instructions on how the LLM can fetch different types of data that it might need. So that's the important keyword here, might need, because we don't know exactly what are all the different tools it would need, right? If we knew that, we could just run it on our server ourselves. We still need that intelligence from Claude, but what we are going to do is we're just going to ask a question and we are going to give it instructions to let it know how it could access additional data that it might require. We give all of this as part of our first prompt, okay? So this all comes to Claude. And Claude, based on its intelligence, it understands the question and it figures out that it needs these additional pieces of information. And since we had given this additional instructions on how it could fetch the data it needs, it makes the judgment call to send us back a response letting us know that it needs that additional data. Now it's up to us on our server side to run the code to fetch that additional piece of data. So it could be an API call, or it could be like some kind of a function call in our machine, whatever it might be. We take care of fetching that additional piece of data and sending it back to Claude as additional context. Now Claude, since it has the missing information that it needed, now is able to give us an intelligent response for our question by means of using this additional data that it got again from us, and gives us the final response. So this is basically how the tool use works. Claude itself is not calling any tools directly. It is just sending us a response back to our server, and it is up to us to call the different tools to fetch any information or do any work on our side and send the additional context back to Claude so that it can then put it all together and give us an intelligent response. So that is how things have been set up for Claude to make use of tools. To drive home this concept and come full circle, we look at the solution that we have now for the problem that we faced initially. So initially, without tool use, when you asked for the weather in San Francisco, Claude just said it doesn't have that information. But now, when you ask that same question with the mechanism that we discussed over here, what's going to happen is Claude will be able to actually provide us an answer. From our server, when we ask about the weather, we include details on how it can retrieve different weather data, okay? And then Claude uses its intelligence and knows that it doesn't have up-to-date weather information on, San Francisco. So it just asks us to fetch that information. On our server, we do some sort of an API call to get that piece of information, and we send it back to Claude, okay? Then Claude nicely formats that information and gives us an actual response, letting us know what is the weather right now in San Francisco. But the thing is, it is us who actually fetched that information and gave it to Claude, but Claude will use its intelligence to format it nicely and send it back, okay? So this is a simplistic example, but you can imagine when you want Claude to intelligently put together certain pieces of information together to give you some sort of a summary. Yes, it is still us who are going to do all the API calls to fetch all these different pieces of information. It can also do some, processing work. It can create files, edit files, or create folders and directories, and it can essentially do anything that you want, because at the end of the day, when Claude sends the response back, it's up to us, right? So we can essentially call different, pieces of software to do certain things for us. And we send that response back saying, okay, these are the things that we have done, okay? So basically here in our server, we do all the grunt work, okay? And Claude does the intelligence work. So we do the grunt work here, and here all the intelligence happens, okay? So Claude is the brain, and here we have the hands and feet, if you will. Claude puts together all that information and gives us the final response. So this was an introduction to how tool use is done with Claude. Follow along if you're exploring AI for your workflows.